American military targets in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, and other places. I mean, some targets for them are obvious places that anybody would be able to pick off a map, places like air bases or even US embassies or consulates. But for all the damage that has been done to Iran's offensive capabilities in this war thus far, Iran has somehow also been able to hit things like, reportedly, a CIA facility in Riyadh, and a naval command and control facility in Bahrain, and US radar facilities that are not clearly marked on any map and not obvious locations for anybody. How has Iran been able to find targets like that so they could aim their missiles and their drones at American facilities like that with such specificity? Well, the Washington Post and the Associated Press and us here at MS Now have all now reported that Iran has been getting help in targeting American personnel and military facilities, help from a sophisticated military ally in targeting U.S. personnel and U.S. military capabilities all over the Middle East. The Washington Post's report on this was first, and they explained it bluntly and clearly. Quote, Russia is providing Iran with targeting information to attack American forces in the Middle East. The assistance signals that the rapidly expanding conflict now features one of America's chief nuclear-armed competitors with exquisite intelligence capabilities. Quote, Iran possesses only a handful of military-grade satellites and no satellite constellation of its own, which would make imagery provided by Russia much more Russia and its much more advanced space capabilities highly valuable to the Iranians. So again, this was first reported by the Washington Post, this reporting then corroborated by the Associated Press and by us here at MS Now. The upshot is that Russia is helping Iran. Russia specifically is giving them targeting information, giving them very specific locations, using their own intelligence capabilities to give the Iranians very specific locations so they know where to attack American troops to try to kill them and where to attack American facilities in the Middle East. Russia is giving Iran that information.
Oh my God.
What should the United States do about that? Well, under the leadership of Donald Trump, the United States has decided that under these circumstances, what our response is going to be is that we're going to ease sanctions on Russia. Ease sanctions on Russia. Trump has moved to give Russia relief from sanctions.
What?
Trump has moved specifically to let Russia sell more of its oil and gas, get around sanctions, restrictions that might have prevented them from doing that before. I mean, Russia is allies with Iran, right? Russia issued a statement of congratulations when Iran chose Khomeini's son to replace him as the country's supreme leader. Congratulations, Junior. Enjoy your Ayatollahship. It's a close relation, a close connection to the radical and powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Putin sends his personal congratulations. But, you know, Russia, as much as they might not want to see their ally put in difficult straits, Russia financially is actually really enjoying this moment. Because what does Russia have to offer the world? What does Russia have to offer the world economy? And if you don't count vodka and potash, Russia basically has two industries, two things to offer the world: oil and war. And they're using their war-making abilities, their intelligence and satellite capabilities to help Iran kill Americans, to help Iran target and kill Americans in the Middle East. Also, on the war-making front, Russia is obviously enjoying seeing the United States burn up lots and lots and lots of missiles and interceptor munitions in the Middle East. So we'll be less happy and less able to provide those same types of weapons to Ukraine to fight against Russia. So on the war-fighting side of things for Russia, this is great for them. This is a win-win. And meanwhile, Russia's other industry, oil and gas, is as happy as it's been in a long time because of the huge spike in oil and gas prices all over the world, as Russia's oil and gas competitors in the Persian Gulf all basically get knocked offline. Right? If Russia can just sell their oil and gas, if they can be allowed to get their oil and gas to market, well, Russia's going to be rich again. which they desperately need given how they've spent themselves into oblivion in their endless, pointless Ukraine war. And so we now simultaneously have the US intelligence reports that Russia is helping Iran target American personnel and military facilities to kill Americans in the Middle East, and the news that Trump is cutting sanctions on Russia to ensure they can sell practically all the oil and gas they want and refill their financial coffers as a country. And so what exactly happened today?
That's treason.
When Trump reportedly called a CBS News reporter and said, the war's pretty much over. And then Trump called a bizarre and incoherent press conference at one of his golf resorts where he said, no, it's not pretty much over. Where did you hear that? Who told you that fake news? In the middle of that swirling dust devil of nonsense and reversal and double reversal and incoherence and non sequitur from the President of the United States, what happened in the middle of all that today? Well, according to the Kremlin, in the middle of all that, President Donald Trump called Vladimir Putin and talked to him for an hour. And we only learned about that phone call because the Kremlin told us about it. The White House didn't announce it. The Kremlin did. Did the White House even know Trump was doing that before the Kremlin told everybody it had happened? Did Trump just call Putin from his flip phone? Was it while he was playing golf? Was it even in the White House calendar that today was the day Trump was supposed to check in with his boss? Gulf War III continues. Gulf War I was because Iraq invaded Kuwait and we wanted to make them uninvade Kuwait. Gulf War II was because the George W. Bush administration wanted somewhere else to invade besides Afghanistan, so they made up a fantasy about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction when they didn't. Gulf War III is now, and Donald Trump started it, but for Gulf War III, there is still no coherent explanation from the president or the White House as to what exactly this is all for. Not even an obviously pretextual false reason like we had from George W. Bush. The president did unveil a new purported justification for the war today in his rambling press conference at his golf thing. He said, quote, "We're doing this for the other parts of the world."
Jeez.
We're doing this for the other parts of the world. It's actually hard to argue with that one. That one might actually be true. The Wall Street Journal is now describing this as the most severe energy crisis since the 1970s. CNBC calls it the biggest oil supply disruption in history. Because there is no way to safely move it to market, Saudi Arabia has now cut its production of oil. Iraq's production of oil is down to less than 1/3 what it was before Trump started this war. In Qatar and Kuwait and Bahrain, major energy companies have declared force majeure, which basically means they're saying, hey, act of God, outside our control, we can no longer be held to any contracts we previously signed, as they all radically scale down their oil and gas production. And it's not only fuel, it's also food. Huge amounts of fertilizer pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Fertilizer bound for ports all over the world, for crops all over the world, for foodstuffs all over the world. Raw materials related to the petroleum industry also being choked off. A plastics plant north of Tokyo started to scale down production on Friday because they can't get the raw materials they use in that production process because they're petroleum-based products. It's also aluminum and other commodities like that, as facilities like smelters shut down for lack of fuel. The nation of Bangladesh just closed its universities because they need to conserve energy. They need to conserve electricity used by the universities, and they need to reduce the need for people to drive anywhere. Whole regions in the Philippines, including the capital city of Manila, just forced employers to institute a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week, specifically to try to save energy. Gas stations in Vietnam have started to run out of fuel. They've started to put up sold out signs all over Hanoi. The New York Times reports that Pakistan's strategy is to hike gas prices so people hopefully stop driving, and they're hoping that will be a protective measure to try to preserve both the supply and the price of diesel for Pakistan's trucks and buses. Okay, maybe that'll work for some time. Maybe some of that will work for some time. Why did all this happen? What was all this for?
We're doing this for the other parts of the world.
We're doing this for the other parts of the world. We're doing this for the other parts of the world. I'm sure they're delighted with that. All right, we've just received in the tape of this is, again, how this works. I mentioned at the show just a short time ago, the dignified transfer took place for U.S. Army Sergeant Benjamin Pennington. He is the 7th U.S. service member to die in combat in this nation's ongoing war with Iran. The way these things go is that we do not bring you these events when they happen live, these dignified transfers at Dover, but we can turn them around very quickly after they've happened, as soon as we get in that tape. Sergeant Pennington died yesterday after succumbing to injuries after an attack on the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia just over a week ago. Vice President J.D. Vance was at Dover to observe tonight's dignified transfer and also to meet with Sergeant Pennington's family. We're told that Vice President Vance was joined by the Defense Secretary and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I should just tell you, we're going to show you this now, but as is customary, the video that we have of this solemn event is silent. There is no audio. That is on purpose. But we've just gotten this in. Let's turn to it now. Watch.